Okay, so welcome to day 7 of Advent of Code. Um, guess we will start by reflecting on day 6, right? Um, on the whole, day 6 went fairly well. Not much to beat myself up about. Um, I mean, part 1 I got through fairly quickly. In hindsight, I actually part 2 was both pretty obvious what it was going to be, and the code for part 2 was no longer than that of part 1. So there's something to be said for just having skipped right to that as opposed to doing the really stupid thing in the beginning, but whatever, it is what it is. What I definitely did wrong, I did a huge amount of dithering over, I finished part 1, and then part 2 was, run this for 256 iterations. And it's obvious in Advent of Code when they do that the second part isn't going to fit in main memory or is going to be too slow to execute. If the completely naive approach worked for both parts, it wouldn't be much of a puzzle, would it? So I spent, 5 minutes or something futzing around just to get part 1 running before even turning to thinking about the fast way to do part 2. And it took me all of a couple of seconds to realize what the code should look like for part 2. And if I just started that immediately, that would have been faster. If we care about faster, we do a little bit. So that's, um, yeah. So we can do better at that. Um, it is the case, the little bugs that I had, dictionary lookups, return optionals. I knew that, but you're typing and you don't bother to put the exclamation points in, partly because that exclamation points are not the way you write real Swift code. If you're force unwrapping things, generally you're doing something wrong in production code. Um, but you but in this kind of code, it's good because it fails fast. You'll get an error right away. You'll know you did something wrong. You'll know your input is bogus or something like that. Whereas the more engineering-y approaches, undoing a let inside an if and yada yada yada, all that stuff is a bad idea because it won't fail as quickly. Um, we used a few loops here, to like initialize these things. There are better ways to do that. We could have actually just passed a series of pairs, which could have been a range map statement, which I think actually we did use in one previous day. Um, and that would be a little more impressive. But it's fine because it didn't take me a long time to write these 2-line loops, so that's okay. But it is a little bit embarrassing, and if sorry, I'm always paranoid about time. Um, but it's embarrassing because the closest thing that these programming contests are to real life is programming job interviews. And in job interviews, you do actually want to demonstrate that you are intimately familiar with all the idioms of the language. It's not that the idioms are all that important, but they speak to your expertise, they speak to your experience, and if your resume says that you've been coding Python for 10, 20 years, you should certainly know all the Python idioms. You should follow the Python coding style and everything because yeah, that's just how it is. Uh, I should also say, looking at the video, I didn't do a very good job of explaining the strategy for the second part. I think it was still fairly obvious how that works, but I guess part of the reason we make these videos is to explain, and what seems obvious once you understand it isn't necessarily obvious if you don't. So, let's. Okay, so, on to day 7. Let's see what we have. Here we go. Is this just an average? I'm a little confused. Well, let's grab our input. Again, oh, come on. Again, let's not bother parsing any of this because comma separated things, we can just, no, we can just throw into an array. And, is there an average function? There almost certainly is an average function, but right. That is an integer average though, and that might be have an off by one thing in it, but I'm not even quite sure what we're doing. This cost. Determine the horizontal position, how much fuel I'll spend to align to that position. So let's calculate the fuel. Is abs? Yeah, looks like it is a function. Okay, now this is the way I'm gonna cheat. 3, 5, 8. So the first one is lower, so that means that our truncation shouldn't have been so bad. Is that right? Oh no. Okay, so I didn't understand this problem, I guess. Two to 2, 14 to 2. So how is this not just the average that we want to get? Wait, the one that costs the least fuel is position 2, but that's nothing like the average of those. I guess it's not the average. Okay, so forget all that crap. For P in okay. No, let's do something smarter than that. So we're gonna just do the best we can on all these. Oh no, Max. Can you not? Max is only of the 2? What? So let's say 1400. We know it's not going to be more than 1400. 8. But that's because we used av and not p. Okay. I wonder what that position was. So actually, I have not thought through exactly how to compute the optimal position. Okay, so to 5. Oh, this is good because our algorithm works, but now we just have to figure out what is the formula for moving. Okay, it's the sum from 1 to n. This is an old Gauss thing, isn't it? N times n plus 1 over 2 or something like that. So if we're moving 9, then it's 9 times 8. No, this isn't right at all. N, wait, n times n plus 1 over 2. So 16 to 5 is, no, 11. 11 times 10, no, 11 times 12 is 132. I think that's right. So n plus 1 over 2. It took me a long time to puzzle that out. Okay, so n equal as d minus p. N times n plus 1 over 2. I feel I have, again, done quite a poor job of explaining this. So we are going to make a guess, and then we're going to think through whether this guess is right. Oh yeah, we got it. Woohoo! Okay, apparently everyone did this very quickly. So, come on. Come on. Because that was 8 minutes or something like that. So, what were my rankings? Come on, Advent of Code. I wonder if this is slow because everyone is submitting their answers so quickly because this was such a simple problem. Well, anyway, as we're waiting to get the rankings and everything, I did quite a poor job of explaining, so we won't wait for the recap to do this. The point here is that, oh no, poor Eric. I feel bad just hitting it again. Oh no. Oh, well, Advent of God is. But we finished the puzzle before it went down, and that's what really matters. So, as I was saying, in the second part, whatever the distance is between D, which is the position of the particular crab ship we're considering right now, the distance between that and P is N, right? And the amount of fuel is the sum of all the integers from 1 to n, right? That's actually quite a famous little formula, and I think the story is that Gauss came up with it as like an elementary school student or something. And the intuition behind the formula, if you want to add up all the numbers between 1 and 100, you take the average of that set, which is easy to compute because you know it's 50. And then you multiply that by the number of things in the set, which is 100. And you get 50, And so that is, n is the number of numbers we're adding up, and the average is n plus 1 over 2, right? So you can sum the integers from 1 to n with the formula n times n plus 1 over 2. So that's what we did. That's how we computed the fuel for each of these ships. And because we were really dumb on the first one and just tried all the positions, we didn't need to do anything clever. And then we just got our minimum and we printed that out. I guess Advent of Code is down. So we'll look at speed and everything and how we did compared to other people tomorrow when we reflect. So I'll see you then.